back together, went out there to get him, and luckily the door wouldn't open for him to get outside on our screen porch there, and got him back into the house. And at that time, my mom comes in with the minister, and they help us get him, back into his own bed. And the minister's like, I got it from here. I'll, calm him down. So he's in there talking to him for at least about a half hour. So I'm telling my mom what had happened, and lift up my shirt and show her, and she's like, oh my God, your back's all, scratched up and everything. And she couldn't believe that she goes, he literally lifted you. I said, he literally picked me right off the floor and threw me across the living room. And which shocked her. And so when the minister finally got him calmed down, he comes out and he says, everything's good. And he goes, I think he's coming to terms with his death. That's why he's scared and everything. And he was unaware of what had happened before he got there. And so he goes, but he wants to talk to Mike, And so I come in there, and I'm standing at his bedroom door, kind of cautious, if he's going to grab me or something. And he's like, hey, everything's better now. And I go, well, that's good. And he goes, the angels came. And I go, the angels came? And he goes, yeah. He goes, they made, scared away whatever these demons he was talking about that he was seeing. And he goes, there's one standing right behind you. So I looked to my left, and my mom had this like Victorian antique looking cherub angel on her wall. And I said, are you talking about this? And he goes, no, which is a response my dad would say. He goes, no, you dumbass. There's a 6-foot-tall, blonde-haired guy with blue eyes holding a sword and shield behind you. And I'm like, look behind me, and I'm like, there's no one behind me, And he's like, well, he's there, and everything's okay. So he finally went to sleep, and, I shared what had happened with my mom and the minister, and they were all surprised. And the next day, my mom comes to get me, and she's like, your dad's back to his weak state. And I went in there, and he's like, hey, I heard last night was crazy. I don't remember any of it. And I said, yeah, it was pretty terrifying. I said, you literally threw me across the living room. And he's like, in shock. He's like, there's no way. He goes, I can't even, hold a glass of water on my own. And I said, well, you did. You lifted me right up in the air and just tossed me like I was a rag doll, And he was in shock, and I explained about the angels and asked if he remembered that, and he didn't. But it wasn't until years later when 9/11 happened, my mom and I were like, wow, is that something?
Yeah.
Was that what he was prophesizing? Because it matched with, with all the scenario that he was describing, that night.
I thought that too when you were saying, oh my goodness, wow.
So after that incident, it was like a few days later, his health was deteriorating. We had contacted hospice, and hospice came in, and they had put him in a medical bed in our living room and was taking care of him. And then a few days later, after he was put into that, he went into a coma. His health, started deteriorating in June. And he finally, over time, there was this one night, they came to my mom and I and said, look, we're scheduled to be off tomorrow, but we feel he might pass away because his body temperature is really increasing. And my mom goes, well, I think I can handle it tonight. If we need you, we'll call you. And she goes, if anything comes up tomorrow, we'll definitely call you to come back, because they were scheduled to be off the next day. They came like every other day to help out. And so later that night, I go to my mom, do you need me to stay up? And she's like, no, I'll look after him. If I need you, I'll come wake you up. So she goes to watch him, and about 3 o'clock in the morning, a little after 3, he passed away. And so she was at his side for about a half hour grieving, and she decided to go wake me up to let me know that he had passed away. And before she could leave the room, all of a sudden she hears him and turns around and finds him sitting up out of the bed going,
oh my,
wait, come back, I need to talk to you. And she was like in shock.
Oh, and yeah.
He took his pulse, he wasn't breathing, and she heard his last breath, come from him.
Oh.
And he was all, like in full health. you know, it was amazing. And
Oh my
he's
goodness.
like, I begged them for to allow me to come back, and he goes, I wanted you and Mike to know that everything's going to be okay. So she goes back there to sit to him, and he's talking to her, and he's talking about, you know, he's no longer in pain over there and that. And then he starts talking to past relatives and friends that had passed away. My mom said she couldn't see them, but she could feel like the static electricity like in the air. She had like, you know, her hair would stand up on end and that. And one of the most amazing things during that, my dad's first wife was Japanese he had met while he was stationed in Japan. He lived there for 3 years. And she had passed away in '63 from cancer. And so he was speaking fluent Japanese and then interpreting back and forth to my mom.
Wow.
And telling my mom that she wanted to thank my mom for taking care of my dad on this side, and that she'll be taking care of him on the other side.
Real.
Yeah.
Sorry. It still happens.
And so, you know, which was, you know, amazing. And then she's talking about relatives that he was talking to and several friends that passed regards and that. And so as time went on, she's like, I need to go wake up Mike. And my dad's like, well, before you do that, he goes, I'd really like to freshen up. And she's like, really? And he's like, yeah, I want to freshen up. And he gets out of the bed on his own, and she's, you know, like worried he's going to fall down. He's like, no, I got it. And he walked to his own bathroom and took a shower and got dressed and got in his own bed. And then he says, all right, go get Mike. And so my mom wakes me up, and I said, did Dad pass away? And she goes, well, yes and no. You need to come and see this. I don't know how to explain it. And so I was like all puzzled in that. So I get out of bed, and I start heading to the living room, and I see that the hospice bed is empty. And I said, where's he at? And she's like, he's in his own bed. I'm like, what? And so I go into the bedroom and see them in his bed, you know, looking healthy. And I was just in shock. And so he had me sit down next to him and we were talking. And he goes, I just want to make sure that you and your mother are going to be okay, and I don't want you to worry about me. And so he goes, do you have any questions? And I'm like, total shock. I didn't, you know what to say. And so I had said to him, I said, well, it's a little late to ask you how to use some of your tools. My dad protective of his tools. And he, you know, apologized, you know, for being, you know, a little hard and strict